Hello and welcome back to All My Art and Soul. I'm Michelle Holden, and this week we are going to start, or I am going to start, a journey of 3 paintings. These are a 12 by 12 panel, wood panel, and I decided to start with a texture of gesso. And on top of that, once it's dried, and these have been sitting around for a couple of weeks because I've been doing, the art journal, abstract art journal pages and a couple of steps before, but I have been talking about them in my videos. So I'm finally getting around to them. And I wanted to start, and of course I'm really, now that I'm working with panel, I'm really liking the hard surface with mixed media and especially collage. So I don't know if you work with multiple substrates, but I think all 3, paper, canvas, and panel, have their purposes. But I wanted to do something different. As you know, I always am. So I'm not using the gloss fluid. This is just medium, matte medium at its regular fluidity, or sort of in between. And I'm using nickel azo gold as my first layer, because I really wanted it really light but really warm, and I wanted to pick up all of the textures and marks that I made into the gesso with different tools. So you can only imagine, ends of brushes, an awl, anything that can make a really interesting mark. And I still need to experiment more with that. So I didn't just leave it with the nickel azo. I put a little orange in this one, and I don't know if I like it or not, but you know what? It doesn't matter at this point. This video is just going to be about the very first 2-3 layers. And then, of course, you need to let it really dry. And after it's dry and you see the different materials that I'm using pages from the old books. Let's see, my very thin deli paper, and I'm learning to use it without tearing it, but it's so transparent. So my intention for these initial layers was to have some beautiful textured marks picked up by this nickel azo. And of course, in hindsight, we always love this. I could have scraped it more. You see when it's really white and you can really see the marks and it's just the marks. I could have wiped it more. Maybe next time I do another set of 3 with a rag, and just left a little bit of that nickel azo, but more the marks would just be showing. So playing with that is a really, really cool thing. And let's see. So here's the third one. So I made them similar but different, the marks. And as you can see, I'm just spritzing it with a little water, just so it can smooth. It can just, the color shaper can move more smoothly across the surface. And while I'm doing it, I'm experimenting with different ways and different angles to hold the color shaper to get different amounts of layers on the surface. And I tried that first one, which is that little window cleaner. And I don't know, because there wasn't enough rubber on the edge, or it was older already. It just didn't perfectly go across. But maybe I just wasn't holding it right. So anyway, you might want to start with an edge that is super, super clean, doesn't have any older paint on it, and that's what I discovered. So the third one, I use it again, and it does work, but I think the color shaper, the rubber, or whatever, it's not rubber, I know this. The material is a lot more flexible, So cleaning up those edges because I don't want to build up on those edges because it gets really lumpy once you let paint start building up there. And as you can see, I put an extra bunch on here and it's, whoa, it's way too much. So changing that angle of the color shaper, the more perpendicular you put it or you hold it, the more paint or it scrapes from the surface. And so we're just letting this go here. And then, of course, cleaning up the edges. After these are done, of course, they need to thoroughly dry. And that was only about an hour. Depending on how much ventilation you have in your studio, I have a ceiling fan that is constantly on. And of course, I could have used my hairdryer, but I had other things to do. Okay, here comes the third and final. As I said, it's a journey of 3 paintings. And in my mind, I have been going and sort of researching different possibilities as to where these paintings could go or can go, but I'm not committing. I'm trying not to commit. And it's going to be tricky because if you continue watching the video and watch it to the end, you'll see it's harder to let go of layers that you really like. So I really, really like these, but keeping in mind, it's the effects that I'm learning, and you're learning if you're following along with similar. There it is. I come in with the third and I thought, okay, let's try this. And it's okay. It removes it more evenly, but still leaving some horizontal streaks. And I'm okay with that. And I sort of like those. Because if you saw the, was it 3 or 4 or 6 of the turquoise black and the last mixed media series that I did, I discovered so many neat shapes, like that bird-like shape going across this sky that they sort of, abstract, but only if you see it that way. And yeah, you just never know. And maybe that's why I like using these tools, just because you just never know what's going to happen. Okay, so letting those dry. And now all the layers, all 3 panels are dry. So I wanted to start with some marks. And I've been watching, of course, I don't like to watch so many videos because you have to be careful that your work starts looking like other people's art. And that's not the mission here. That's not the journey. It's not what I'm doing. I look around to see, okay, what are other possible layers? Because I haven't got this in my art process yet. But once you do, then it's there in your repertoire. And then you have more to play with and you can rely more on yourself, and then your art starts being more authentic. So I was remembering that, okay, yes, I want to start with marks. I saw this other artist do that. She was working with large canvases on the floor, and I know that I love the water-soluble graphite, but didn't have it on hand, so I thought, okay, I love my pencil marks, and I just want to activate some energy into it. Knowing, too, that the lines, when seen underneath the thin tissue paper or deli wrap paper that you're using, that's semi-transparent, really looks cool. It's I don't know what it is it does to the eye when you can see those previous marks and layers underneath and that play of push and pull. So that's what I'm after. So these 2 pieces, nope, I don't like them. These are the ones here that I pictured. And I've had this vision in my mind for a while. And, it feels so good to finally get to it. Now, the organic black and white plants or organic shapes right there, the piece that is in the upper right-hand corner. I don't end up using it. It just doesn't have, I love it, but there's too much black too close together, which is not allowing the under layer, the previous marks on the under layer to show through. So that's the reason. And that is a stencil girl. And I've been hunting around for some more, and I know they've had some great sales lately, and they've been adding on some new artists, and wow, some really cool organic shapes. So this piece with the squares, I think I know what I did. I just painted on the brayer in dabs and rolled it across the deli paper. And I wanted to leave bigger spaces again so you can see the marks underneath. So I just removed that one. That's one I was just talking to. Oh yes, and you can see it above. You can see sort of the plant-like shapes, but they're upside down. It's the coolest one. But this is the one. These are the ones. These are the easiest ones to make, like I said. And I really do think it's ink, not paint. But I finally purchased the black fluid by Liquitex, and the white fluid from Liquitex. So I'll be using those next week on the next layer. So please stay to the end, hang in there, because who knows where this journey of 3 paintings is going to go. I've got quite a few different ideas, and I'm putting these layers on, and I do plan. I was going to keep it minimal, but I still want some bright colors. I don't want to limit myself, especially in your under layers, your early layers, because you can always cover those up, but it's so nice to have like a little piece of pink showing through. That isn't, of course, taking the focus away, or, it's all about ratios of your colors. So this is the first time that I've finally found some serviettes or napkins at my dollar store. And believe me, you have to peel away the extra, they're 2-ply. So of course you're tearing away the 2nd ply. And they're not as absorbent, and they really bubble up a lot. So what I discovered today was you have to, and I think maybe just using a gloss medium, or the regular medium, not the heavy gloss medium. It's thinner, and I think it would absorb more. You put it on the surface first of the panel and then sit it down, because it won't go through if there isn't enough underneath. And you think, well, why isn't it absorbing? It's supposed to be a serviette or a napkin. So anyway, and you can't rip it open, and I've torn a couple of them because they're delicate, and anyway, it's all a learning curve. But I really loved the yellow and white polka dot rather than black and white. So it's sort of, see how it's melting into the background, which I really love. And of course that page is an old, really cool old book. I forget, what is it? How to do bookkeeping, high school bookkeeping. And I think it's from the 60s or something. So really good find in my bookstore, my secondhand bookstore, because it has the numbers and that ledger kind of feel to it. Hard to find ledger books or ledger paper where I am. I'm sure I could order it on Etsy. Oh, jeez. Too much report cards. Anyway. Yes, those are done. Now I can get back and be sort of a week or so ahead and start really getting into a flow so we can get going here. And I decided to use this one piece, as you can see, the black background with the white circles on each piece, just to sneak in, I don't know. I just thought, ooh, that would be interesting to do. So I'm thinking grid in composition and of course quadrants. So, you know, that's sort of part of it as well. Thinking in threes, but not overly thinking. And I think intuitively I do that now. And that I didn't do before. That has taken some time and it's really great. It feels so good not to have to overthink, and you're not reacting. There's a big difference between reacting and responding. So we're responding to the elements, principles, shapes, composition, color, texture, marks, all at the same time. So there's this bubbles driving me crazy. So it does lift a little bit of that underneath, but that's okay because you can't see it anyway, and it finally goes down. And as I've checked them and see them here in front of me, they're nice and dry. And before I move on to the next layers, to protect this layers, I'm going to put a really good coat of just the matte medium on it because it's nice and thin. And I don't like, but maybe I do. When you're glazing, if you have paper, papers sort of respond differently to different paints. I don't want them to absorb like a stain, but that is cool. If it happens accidentally, it doesn't really matter. But I'd rather it remain on the surface so I can remove or add a spritz of the alcohol. So there's that one done. All right, let's move on to the next one. And I love how, even though they're the same, they're very different. I love this paper, or this collage. Now, I've got some other paper that I'm going to use, and I think it's just as maybe not quite as transparent. Oh, by the way, that was the beginning of the second one. This is the third one. I do have all three at the end, and for some reason, this happens every once in a while. When I'm downloading a file, it gets corrupted, and then I cannot get it back. This is with the Osmo Pocket, with the DJI software. So I've been trying to look up everything to find out what happens to get the file back. Anyway, so there's nothing I can do about that. And anyway, it's very similar, so I'll just continue to talk you through my process here. And as you can see, I'm putting a different size of this collage around in each quadrant, or at least in 3 of the quadrants. So you have to be careful. I don't want it to look so planned out, overthought. And a lot of it is going to be covered by other layers coming up. So I don't know what's going to still remain, but in order to still see what's below, my intention is to use transparent layers for this, at least for the next 3rd and 4th. So this is still we call this the beginning stage. And you see how I was going to straighten it out, and I thought, no, it looks better on a slight angle. It's more dynamic. And that's another thing that I have not used enough, is diagonals. So I'm going to really keep that in mind. So these 3 paintings, I want them to remain in my authentic style, which is still developing, and I don't want them to go way off the mark, but I still want to experiment with some new colors, some vibrant colors. So I'm thinking, and I love the combination of orange, pink, yellow with black and white. I may bring in a blue a tiny bit. Well, that would have to be a very light turquoise or something like that. And I know I use this palette a lot, but the possibilities are really endless. So I'm just still experimenting with its colors and trying to keep the palette simple. As you can see, I'm just trying to, okay, that feels right, slap it down. And again, this is the deli wrap paper. It's the unwaxed, so it's very thin, with the jelly plate. Different things rolled across with the brayer, getting different organic, unplanned shapes. And then here comes some other older pages from an older book. I think this was some sort of girl guide kind of thing. It doesn't really matter. It's just the different tones. Those were really dark. They tear so easily. So here's a bunch that I just cut paper strips. Of course, I loaded the brayer with black, put the paper strips across, like a crisscross, and then just pressed it and used different widths. So I might use thinner ones next time so you can get more squares or rectangles. So that's fun to experiment with. And that little piece there that I took off was probably a remnant from one of the deli wraps. So printing and mark making on book pages is so much better than just using a book page. You get to put more authenticity in it, or on it, I should say. So the third one, I ran out of those ledgerish bookkeeping kind of things, so I found it again, and I just put one nice piece. So the three paintings would have some unity, even though I don't even know how much we're going to see. Now, I plan to work over some and in between with some black. There goes those. And I wanted to keep in 6. I don't know why. It's just, see how I'm picking up that line, that horizontal line that's going to continue across and then drop down? So who knows what will happen. So you might want to remember that. Keep those lines, some of them, not all of them. You don't want it too planned. But you just want each quadrant to be different. And you want to think in 3s, but you want to leave space too. But oh yeah, see, it just fit there so perfectly. I needed some polka dots because the other 2 have them, and this would look weird if it didn't, I think. And it doesn't matter because you can put those later on in the other layers. If something ends up getting buried or veiled, is which I like to use, you can bring it back. And that's why it's important to document your stages of layers for yourself in the future. And I know we just keep them on our devices, and it would be great to have them out, but I guess because we're visual, so hey, there's only so much room in the studio. I make a bunch of binders. I have a binder for each mentor artist or course that I'm doing. I have a mixed media book, big 11 by 14, and so I at least keep all of that. We're going to be working with color in the Facebook group. So this is one of the main things that I want, is why I want to keep this palette simple. So that's the end of the first layer. So let's have a close-up of each one. So you'll get to see that second one that sort of jumped away or wherever it went. There it is. And I love squares because you can spin them. So this is the beginning of the journey of 3 paintings. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.